Azure API Management and Power Apps?
It's a very interesting topic. It's going to connect that bridge between the code developer and the citizen developer. So let me start giving a brief of what is API management is. If you guys have not seen it before, API management is a hub for enterprise API. Now, we all know every enterprise has many APIs, or maybe external APIs are available across. What Azure has provided, it provided this control environment where we can have those API controlled and applied policy so that API manager or developer who are building those API can easily publish their API. And as an app developer or the consumer of those API can easily consume those API. Now, if you are an API manager or API developer, and if you are creating a cool API, you always wanted to publish them easily. You also wanted them to be abstracted, secure, and protected. So it's not be visible for, so not everyone can see how you are creating those API. You also want to make sure that it is easy to update and make new revision or version of your API. And at the same time, if you are an app developer, that's most of us are going to be, you need to know what all APIs are available and how you can consume them or how you can use them. And all of these features provided by APIM fairly easily. And on top of that, there can be many policies that APIM manager can define to control those API. And those can be who can access what API. Even in the API, if you have multiple method or operations, you can restrict those operations to a restricted group of people. Now, this is good. This is pretty much what APIM does. Now, what is an API in APIM? So if you have any API, or if you like to have API in APIM, any API that has an HTTP endpoint. So if your API is saying HTTP and the URL, you can easily host that API in the APIM. So this can be an API hosted in Azure, an external API. And if you look at these two icons, this is very important, a logic app. A logic app can be exposed as an API in the APIM. Even if you are creating a function app or Azure function, you can have them as an API available in your APIM. So this is cool. This is all about Azure. Now, why we are talking APIM for Power Platform? So what you can do, if you have an API in the APIM, you can export those API as a custom connector for your Power Platform environment. And that's fairly on few clicks. You can export that API as a custom connector, and that will be available in your environment, whichever environment you are selecting to export for the exporting. It will be available in that environment as a custom connector. And with that, I'll go to the next slide. And in this slide, this is the presentation of if I like to use an API in my app or in my Power Automate right now. As of now, if I like to consume an API in my Power Apps or in my Power Automate, what I have to do today, either I have to create a custom connector, or I have to use an HTTP action, or I need to go with a premium connector. That means a third-party connector. Those are available right now. And if you look at this icon, all of these are a premium features. So you have to have a premium license for the app maker who want to consume these APIs. That problem has been resolved or addressed by the recent announcement from Microsoft. And that's why we are here today. So as I said earlier, that you can export your API as a custom connector for Power Platform from APIM. If, and this is very carefully, and this is very interesting, this is where the game is going to change. If you are exporting that API to your Dataverse for Teams environment, that custom connector going to be a standard connector. So you are not paying a premium license for the connector that has been exported from the APIM to your Microsoft Teams environment. So now you can imagine what you can do now. You can create or use any API that exists right now, or maybe your organization has created some cool app services or logic app that you like to use in your app on your Power Automate. You can use it in few clicks. This is now final picture. what you can do with the teams and APIM. You can export your API fairly easily from APIM to your Dataverse for Teams environment. And the only price that you are paying is the Azure cost. And trust me, that is very low. I am using this since like a couple of months now. I not even reached the $1.
Absolutely, so, especially if you're calling something like a consumption-based function app, right?
Right.
It might be a few cents a month.
So what I did, I used that APIM feature and I created or I extended. So all of you have seen this app, what I'm presenting right now. This is a My Expense template created by Microsoft. And you have seen the demo of this app many times by many of the great MVP and other users. So what I did, I took this app, I added a feature on this app. So if I go to the expense, I added the scan receipt. So what I extended, I am connecting this app with Azure Cognitive Services, for which I created a logic app that is exposed in APIM as an API. I'm consuming that in my Power App. So whenever I'm going to click on the scan receipt, I'm going to, and again, unfortunately, I cannot mirror my iPhone today. There's some issue going on with that. So as a user, I can select my receipt. And when I click on the process receipt, what's happening right now? I'm sending a request from Power Apps to the APIM, to the logic app, and the logic app using all these cognitive services and responding back all the receipt line item that I have here. There's one more API that I added here. As you can see, here's a currency. So let me pick another receipt. So this is the receipt, as you can see here. Once I process, So what you can do now, you can pick a receipt that is not in the US locale. You can pick any receipt that is outside US. So for example, if you have a receipt that is for UK, right? And that's the receipt that I'm going to pick. So you can change the locale. And this is all of this via cognitive services provided by the Azure. I can click on process receipt, and what it is going to do, it's going to process that receipt, provide me the response, and then I'm going to use another API that I have hosted in the APIM for currency conversion. So once it's loaded, I will show you that. It takes a little bit of time. Meanwhile, any question, Todd?
I see one here from Krishna. When we export APIs as a custom connector and time goes by, if my APIs have gone through changes, do I need to re-export the connector, or will it automatically refer to the main source of the APIs?
Yeah, so to answer your question, if you are using, in my case, like for example, if you have created a logic app or function app, and if you are making changes there, you don't need to re-export because it's going to pass the request. So there's a backend. If backend is changing, you don't need to make changes. But if you have made some update on the API itself, and if you are making some changes there, then you need to re-export it. So
like you change the arguments perhaps that you pass into the API, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Or if you are passing any custom header.
Now, when you've done that and you do re-export the connector, have you done that? Have you seen how you've tried that already? How well did that behave? Did you have to rip everything out of the Power App to get it to pick the changes up and save and shut down the Power App and reopen it? Or did you just bang, put the new connector in and it picked it up?
Yeah, so unless you are keeping the name of the connector same, you don't need to rip the Power Apps off. So,
nice.
So you need to, so there is a little challenge there. You need to remove the older one first. So your app will break for a moment and then you can re-export and then it will automatically pick it up.
Okay.
So this is my app, this is my receipt that was not in the dollar. So there is another API that I'm calling, and what this is going to do is going to convert the pound to the dollar in the real time. Now, the app itself is not what we are trying to show here. What I'm trying to show here, how you can easily do it without creating a custom connector or without even calling a Power Automate from here. So if I jump back to my Power Apps, so this is my Azure. And once you create your APIM service, and if you go there, you can see all of your API listed there. You're going to see many API here. But the API that I'm using for this demo is one of these ones. This is for cognitive services. And you can see there is very simple API because I'm using the logic app. So this is my logic app that I've created, and the logic app also pretty simple. This is a very simple HTTP request response logic app, and if you have created a Power Automate before, this looks pretty similar. So the only thing I'm doing in this HTTP, I'm asking user to provide the information about the request. So input data is actual data of the receipt, the request type, and the locale, and then making a call to this cognitive service. So for the demo, what I used Form Recognizer API. This is in preview. There is another one that is already live, but I use preview because it has more functionality. Now, I'm using logic app because now what you can do with the logic app, as you can see here, I'm asking user to provide the request type. And right now I'm providing request type as a receipt. But what I can do here, I can also use the same logic app for business card reader. And the only thing that user need to provide me the request type as a business card, because that's the request that they need to provide in that case. And I can also use it for another endpoint for the layout. So one logic app can address all of these different scenarios, and you can use the same response because the response is very universal from these cognitive services. You just need to read it correctly. So now you have one logic app that is providing you all the services in the cognitive. The second API that I have created is for currency conversion. Now this is an external API, and as you can see here, this is my API that I'm calling right now. And the only thing I'm doing, the simple method, passing the to currency and from currency and getting the response back. Now you might be thinking that this is super complex what I'm showing right now. It may take a lot of time because I was showing it to someone and he said that yes, looks cool, you can do a lot, but then Power Apps Maker is getting dependent on the app APIM and APIM developer, or they need to learn something. So let me show you quickly in 5 minutes. You can actually create an API in the APIM and use it. So for that purpose, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this National Weather Service API. Very simple API. What it does, once you pass the area, there is a state name. It's going to give you if there's any alert, any weather alert is there. So if you look at this example, this is my API, and this is my query parameter that I need to pass. To create an API, you go to your APIM screen, click on Add API. Now you have multiple options which you can pick from. You can start from the blank API. You can start from Open API. Open API is a swagger or a definition that you get. Sometimes you get the Open API definition for most of the API. You can pick WADL or WSDL, logic apps, app service, and function apps. So all of that is available. What we're going to do, we're going to do the blank API here. So click on the blank API. Just give a name. That's the name. That's the display name of your API. So the URL. This is my URL, as you can see here. So you can paste the URL. Then you need to provide a name for the suffix. And this URL, what you are seeing here, this is the URL what every app developer is going to know about your API. They will never know if the API is this one. So that's another layer of security that added by APIM. So the end user or consumer will never know what API is actually getting called. They're always going to know this API. So.
And this is also how you can go back and rev your API.
Yes.
Point it at a new API or dev or prod or QA, whatever.
Right. So you can provide any name, whichever you like the end user to see. So I'm going to type alert, click on create. And what that's going to do is going to create the API. Now this is how an empty API is created. We need to add operation to API. What should happen when someone calls this API? So I click on this add operation. Again, very similarly, I can type any display names that I like. Because this is a get operation, I'm trying to get information about the alert on this particular state. So you will say get. And if you don't have any method defined in your API, like in here, there's no method, it's just the plain API that I'm calling. You can always just type the / here. And then in the query parameter, and this is where you can define different header request response that you needed. So in the query parameter, you can define a query parameter. In our case, the query parameter is the state, as you can see, or the area, sorry. And this is the default value that you can pass on. And once the user is going to call this API, they can pick from the default value, or they can override it. And I will click on save. And none of the information that I need to pass here. So let's go ahead and test it. And I'm going to bypass the host proxy. This is for cross-domain calling, because that weather API is going to throw an error if we don't pass this. And I'm going to select my state and click send. So what it's going to do is going to work. And you can see here, I got all the alert that is right now in the Texas. So we created the API. Now it's simpler than creating. You can export it. Now, if you click on these three dots, click on export. Now you have option for Power Apps and Power Automate. Once you click on that, APIM is going to pick all the environment, those are available. It's going to, and again, you can actually export this to a standard environment. Also, you can export it to Teams. So I'm going to pick my Teams environment here and click export. And meanwhile, while it's exporting, let me quickly go to the flow.microsoft.com so we can see that exported connector there.
Hi, Deepak. I have a question.
Yep.
My name is Ramon. I was just wondering regarding like the API management version that you're working with. Like, which version is this? Because I see they have like different price levels there, right? So I was wondering, like, which one did you pick? How
Yes.
much does it cost?
Right.
Sort
So,
of.
yes. So I picked the standard consumption-based version. And if you go to the Azure pricing tool that Azure had, it actually give you a good understanding of how much price is going to be. But if you look at these notification here, I had 200 credit long back, and I'm already expended. And I'm just not using APIM. I'm using other features also. So because this is consumption based, and it's going to be around, I think, 0.00 something dollar per APIM call. But you can definitely calculate all of that in the Azure calculator too.
Good, thank you.
Hey, another question. Can API return tabular data?
Yes. So this is and that's the cool thing about it, because in the APIM, what you can do, there is twofold of it. Your actual API can definitely respond to your any tabular format or the JSON, right? What you can also do in APIM, you can define more response object. So if you look at this one, and if I go to the definition here, you can define your definition for any response type that you like to have. So for example, in case I define this response. So you can do a lot complex, and you can also do very simple, like we are just doing for this weather API. So yes, now answer your question, yes, you can definitely define the tabular response as needed by your API. So I go back to my environment where I exported that connector that we just created. Under custom connector, I should be seeing that connector that I just published, and here it is. Now, if I added this one, you can see all of the information that we have created. And now the cool thing about in this connector, you won't see that weather API at all. Mm-hmm. This is the API that connector is calling. And if I go to the definition, it has the get, and it has this API that we have created. Now,
if you use the monitor, that's the URL you would see in the monitor too, not the other one. Mm-hmm.
And then again, same thing, you can test it from here too. So pretty quickly, you can create these API. Now, again, as I said, you can start from the very basic, like I did here for this one, or you can go very complex from logic app to function app to the app service. So there is a totally what I say, the bandwidth of possibilities here that you can try. Mm-hmm. Like for example, Graph API is very useful for Power Apps or Power Automate. You can create an API for the Graph API where you can pass and you can operate multiple graph operations. And there are so many things that you can do.
Yeah. And you can save yourself a lot of money at the same time. That's
yes. And with this receipt scanner or for this cognitive service that I'm using, It actually very real business case, because now you can have logic app. Again, logic app is also not that much expensive. And you can operate all of these different operations, not even these operations, those are already exist. What you can also do, you can create your custom model with these API. So you don't need to, there's much dependency that you can remove by using these things. So that's it. I think if you have any other question, I'm happy to answer.
So this is a brand new feature. I have a question for you then. Brand new feature, right? You and I started chatting about, hey, that would be cool to get on the call. And how many hours did you put into it from the time where you had the leave request power app installed until you went, okay, now it does what we saw in the demo today?
Right. So as you can see here, the number of API that I have in my APIM. So the most of the time that I invest is actually trying to see what is the best API that I can pick from to use, right? That's the most time I took, because if you can see here, I have picked many APIs. I have the graph and the form recognizer. Mm-hmm. The actual app, actual app creation and the demo doesn't take that long. Maybe this is a few hours of work. The logic app also very simple, because if you are doing the Power Automate, and this logic app is very simple, straightforward logic app. But if you are starting and if you are new to this whole APIM, I think if you spend maybe a week understanding and analyzing what you need to do, that's enough for you to get started and start doing things.
This sounds like one of those really good scenarios for what Donna talked about in her latest blog post, and she talked about fusion dev teams, which is, if you didn't read that, is combinations of pro developers and citizen developers working together. I could totally see pro developers getting in Azure here, dialing in all the APIs, and then just basically saying, hey, all citizen devs, here's your API set for the whole org, have fun.
Right.
Hey, is this only available in Teams though?
Actually not. If you want to use this as a free or the standard connector, that's the team. But you can export any API from APIM to any environment, any Power Platform environment. The only difference between if you are exporting it to the normal or the a regular environment, it's going to be a custom connector that is premium right now. But again, you can do the calculation, how many premium license you want versus what is your Azure cost.
Very good. That's a great demo. So Reza put in a thing in chat here about your YouTube channel. It looks like you've already made a deeper dive video on this too.
Yeah. So this is where I'm starting. So again, this video may not be the perfect for everyone, but yeah. So I thought of putting this video a little bit more detailed, because I knew the 15 minutes is not going to be enough. Plus, we don't want it to be confused that this is pro code. It is pro code. But it's not only pro code. You can actually, as a citizen developer, you can use this feature as of today if you like to. Like if you are building the Power Automate, if you're creating those HTTP request response, and if you're creating custom connector, this is going to be pretty much like that. Of course, we are not thinking that you are going to create a function app or writing like a .NET application that you're going to host it. Yes, that is pro code definitely, but give it a try. You will like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot more configuration back on the Azure side here than anything, right? You're not really writing any code there in the API. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's a great demo too. I really like how you hook those two different pieces in there and combine them into an existing app too, which is always great.
Yep, thank you.